Good afternoon and welcome to our statewide model programs of study in arts and communication. We are so happy that you have decided to join us today for this session. And so today we are going to talk a little bit about our model programs of study. Of course, that's going to include some policy alignments, information about our advisory committee, our mapping process, a review of the guide itself, and then we have a special treat from our colleagues at Mattoon High School. We'll provide an opportunity for you all to give feedback and talk about next steps. A quick note, we highly encourage you to use the Q&A and or chat box, and please note that this webinar is being recorded. And so I think we're going to go ahead and move forward with some introductions. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Janelle from ICCB.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Janelle Washington, Director for Career and Technical Education at the Illinois Community College Board. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, again, on the Arts and Communication Model Program of Study Guide. The Model Program of Study Guides and the process to develop them are extremely helpful in guiding program of study development and improvement at the local level. I know at the colleges, they're really busy working on program of studies to get their programs of study approved per Perkins 5. And so we really look forward to the future guides that are currently in the works, as well as continuing to see the existing models of program and study and action locally. So really excited about this work. As always, I'd like to thank our partners at EdSystems for leading the model programs of study work here in Illinois. And I'd encourage any of you all to reach out to EdSystems with any questions that you have about the model programs of study guides and how they can be implemented in your own work, because they are really happy to assist. So thanks again for joining us today, and I'll turn it back over to Megan so we can get into the guide.
Thank you so much, Janelle. I really appreciate that. Again, my name is Megan Mitchell, and I am the Pathway Manager at EdSystems. I'm going to allow for my colleague Heather to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I almost said good morning. I was like, no, we're getting towards the end of the day here. I'm Heather Penzak. I'm the Director of Innovation and Implementation here at EdSystems, and I'll be talking to you all about the Arts and Communication Model Program of Study today, and was also worked deeply with the Education Model Program of Study if you attended that webinar.
Thank you, Heather. So who are we? So EdSystems is an organization whose mission it is to shape and strengthen education and workforce systems. Our main preference is to advance racial equity and prepare more young people for productive careers in a global society and economy. And so we do that through a couple of ways. So through our college and career pathways, our bridges to post-secondary programming initiatives, and also through data impact and leadership. A couple of things that's really interesting about our work is that we have a reach that is statewide, and we pride ourselves on working with various community networks throughout the state of Illinois and even beyond. And then we like to be very innovative in our space and forward thinking in terms of policy and what's next within the sector of education. So now I'm going to give you all a background of our model programs of study as a whole. And so our purpose in developing these guides is to provide guidance for exemplar local programs to adopt and customize as part of the approval process for the Perkins Plan. We also identify priority dual credit and early college courses that are foundational to a career industry sector, as well as situated for statewide scaling and articulation. Next, we define a set of competencies that should be sequenced across a program of study. And these competencies help prepare students for future work in that particular industry. And then lastly, we connect and provide opportunities for employers to support coursework and work-related experiences. And so who are these guides for? So our intended audience is, of course, high school and college faculty. department heads, early college liaisons, et cetera, and also education for employment system directors. And so what you see here is all the components of what we would define as a good model pathway, right? And so if you look to your left, you'll see in the left rectangles, individualized planning, career-focused instruction, work-based learning, and also core academics. So all of these components really push and accelerate a student to and through from secondary pathway into a post-secondary pathway. And so we really lean into internships, different career explorations, stackable credentials that lead to AA degrees, AAS degrees, and also a bachelor's degree. And so our outcome for these goals is that a student will attain an industry credential, right, that positions them to be successful within the labor markets. And so all of these components here are also part of the pathway endorsement program. I'm going to talk about that here shortly. And so what you see here is our college and career pathway endorsement framework. And so you can see that all of those components that I talked about in a previous slide are listed here as well. And so I'm going to lean into this piece here where we talk about career-focused instruction sequence. And so our primary focus is that students receive at least 2 years of secondary work or equivalent competencies that articulate to a post-secondary credential, right? And so our goal is that students complete at least 6 credit hours of early college. And so we want to make sure that we accelerate students to and through courses, right, that make sure that they are ready for non-remedial coursework, right, and that they are pushing through that process and decreasing their time to completion. And so these are all of the policy alignment of our work. So of course, you see the Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act, career and technical education, dual credit, and a few others listed here. And so when we think about our statewide policy framework, we want to make sure that students are college, career, and life ready. And so some of the components of that is ensuring that students have fundamental skills for all careers, right? That they are generally employable and that they have entrepreneurial skills embedded into their high school experience, that students are familiar with work-based settings and have a robust experience in problem-based learning. Next, again, as stated before, we want to accelerate a student towards a career area. And so that includes multiple years of coursework that increases a commitment into a particular field. We have a special emphasis on early college credit work that's career focused in subjects. And then we want to make sure that students go beyond the traditional high school CTE and industry credential and include some of the complementary education, general education courses. And then lastly, we want to make sure that students are successful in their college level work and also in their career focused work and electives. We want to require placement in college level courses, and that's through a collaboration with local and community colleges. And so here, I know today we are focusing on arts and communications, but as you can see on this slide, we have completed a series of model programs of study. And so we have our website here, so please go ahead and look at these guides. We've been doing these guides since 2020 and then 2021, and then moving into 2022. This year, these are our industry sectors that we are currently working on and excited to publish here this summer. So the role of our advisory committee. And so our advisory committee, they serve as our experts and provide guidance. And so a couple of key important things that they do is they are our eyes and ears into the field, right? And so they give us information about trends that are happening, labor market, information, what credential or degrees are emerging within this particular area. And then they kind of validate our desk research and make sure that it has the most accurate information. And then they give us an eye into the future, right, of what's happening or what's bubbling up for that sector. And so other key important points that they inform is our pathway map approach. They support us in selecting strategic early college credit courses, and then they work with us to identify key competencies that support the work as well. And so now I'm going to lean into our mapping process. So what you see here is a list of all of the components that go into creating our guides. So the first step is identifying high priority occupations, determining promising credentials, and mapping to stackable degrees and certifications. We identify strategic community college courses. We map from secondary to post-secondary sequence, and then lastly, define related technical competencies. This entire process generally takes about 6 months. And so next I'm gonna lean into how we identify high priority occupations, and then how we determine promising credentials and map to stackable degrees and or certificate programs. So you're probably thinking, well, what is a high priority occupation and promising credential? So we use labor market data and the MIT living wage calculator for the state of Illinois as a reference. And so we look at those occupations that have a high growth outlook in the state, and also whose salaries are near or greater than the living wage of one adult plus one child for the state of Illinois. So that's an average in salary. Then a promising credential is a degree or a college certification that immediately prepares a student for entry into a high priority occupation. And so we focus these particular credentials within the community college. And these credentials may also be a clear precursor or a stackable credential for a high priority occupation. So an example for that is what we would define as a CNA role. And so what we know is that post or pre-pandemic, the CNA role did not meet our living wage for the state of Illinois. However, we know that that role is stackable into a lucrative career within the field of nursing. And so therefore, that particular position is a precursor to a stackable credential. And so we've added that as an option within our guide. And so here is what you're looking at is a table of an example of what some of that research looks like when we're looking at those positions that are identified as a high priority occupation. And so you'll see that the example that we're using is for business and finance. To the left, you'll see a list of occupations here. At the top of the table, you'll see the median hourly wage. And then we ask ourselves some critical questions here, and that is, does this role offer a living wage in the state of Illinois according to our threshold? And is there growth within the state for this role? We also list the education entry points, and then also the annual job openings in the state, and then if there is some growth as well. And so you see here, the green is like the roles that we're like, yes, those positions here offer both. They answer the question positively in terms of a living wage and growth in the state. And so those are dotted green. And then the yellow are the those positions where we still have questions about, right? Like we like them, but we're still, exploring and researching if these roles meet our threshold. And then those particular occupations that don't have any indicators there, that means that we did not include them in our guides because they did not meet our threshold. And so what you see here is a list of potential degree programs or certificate programs to your left. And then there's the arrow, because these particular degree programs can lead or translate to the careers to the right. And so there are some markers there. So the red asterisks mean that these particular roles align with the ISB-CTE program of study matrix. And then the double purple arrows are degree programs or certifications that are stackable into other degree programs and or certifications. Now we're going to talk about how we identify strategic community college courses. And so in our desk research, a couple of things that we do is we create a sample of various community colleges throughout the state that offer the program within the sector that are a part of the model program of study of interest in this particular moment. And so we research all of those program courses. And so we tally up the program courses that are career focused and general education. And then we determine those courses that occur or come up most common, that are highly accessible for dual credit and have the potential for transferability within the state of Illinois. And so this is a snapshot of what that work generally looks like. So you'll see this is City College of Chicago. You'll see the courses there within business. We give it a common name. We list a prerequisite. If there's an articulation code, we list that there, any other notes that we have. Then at the top, you'll see all of the academic programs associated with those courses. And you'll see the little tallies there. And that's what we find or we use as a sum to decide if these courses come up more frequently. And so this is just that same document, but just up closer. So you can kind of get a bird's eye view of what that looks like. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about how we map from the secondary to the post-secondary sequence. And so again, a couple of things that I've mentioned that I'll go ahead and reiterate is that we highly recommend that students graduate from high school with at least 6 or more career-focused dual credit or early college credit courses. We want to keep in mind the possibility for unique opportunities like work-based learning or a capstone course. And then we want to consider the typical teacher or faculty credential as well as course delivery and approval process and what that looks like for a district or an institution. Again, we suggest that these programs or these sequence accelerate a student to and through a particular program. And then we recommend that the sequence offers general education subjects, including early college and or AP supplements. Lastly, we're going to talk about how we define related technical competencies. So our related competencies set the foundation for courses within each model program of study. So these courses typically map to credentials within an industry area. Again, they could be easily assessed for early college credit at the secondary level, and they do not currently or are not currently recognized by the Illinois articulation initiatives. And so then we set a set of competencies for each course based on learning objectives. So what this looks like in a practical sense is us literally collecting various course syllabi from different institutions throughout the state and sometimes beyond the state of Illinois, and reviewing what those learning objectives and outcomes are, and then evaluating that information and deciding which one of these outcomes should be included or turned into competencies for these particular courses. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Heather to kind of take a deep dive and review the arts and communication guide itself.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. And so I can't give enough credit to the advisory committee that Megan spoke to earlier. They were composed again of those secondary and post-secondary representatives who really made this guide possible. And as you know, I don't know, pun intended or whatever you might say, we definitely got creative with this guide. And so as I walk through it, I will show you some different ways that if you're familiar with some of our other guides, where there's certain things that are called out here or just look a little bit different than some of the other industries. But this is, again, a large kind of bird's eye view of it. We're going to dive into each piece, but you can see we have really 3 pathways that are within this guide. So your fine arts and design, performing arts, and mass media and communication. There was a lot of talk as we went through this guide about how the arts really develop a well-rounded individual who can be a creative thinker. They're very resilient, right? Very innovative and taking initiative. And just a lot of the essential skills that can be embedded within all of these courses. So you can especially see that too, as you would dive into some of the competencies that we created, which I'll show in a moment. But what I'm going to start to unpack here for you all is that the advisory committee, through our different convenings, right, really emphasized the need that all industries, right, but when we really thought about arts and communications is that there's so many different ways that you could go as you're pursuing this path, right? But as you're going on that path, there's also so many ways that these can be embedded within interdisciplinary options in terms of education, business, marketing, website development, pieces like that, nonprofit management. So I'll explain those here a bit more, but we definitely wanted to emphasize kind of the singular industry of arts and communication, but also that interdisciplinary focus and value here that the industry has. So if we want to move forward to the next one here. The first piece that we're going to show you here are those selected high occupations. And so what you'll notice as you're looking at this, again, they're divided by those 3 different pathways, fine arts and design, performing arts, mass media and communication, is we have a decent amount of occupations on here that are listed as a no for not meeting that living wage threshold that Megan described earlier. And so these are included on there. Part of it, again, so many discussions, there's so many more occupations we could put on all these different guides, right? But wanting to give kind of a clear snapshot for all of them. But the ones that we put on there that are a no, right? They are ones that tend to be a really high interest to students. And so, we don't want to create these guides and tell students like, well, you can't do that, right? Like, it's not going to make money. I mean, you want to give a real conversation here, right? But students are going to be interested in these things. They're going to be excited about being a dancer, for example, right? And so how do you have a conversation with them? Okay, here's what information is showing you. But also through our advisory committee discussions, there's a lot of this in terms of your wage that's not always reflected by the Department of Labor that can be very focused on your entrepreneurial spirit. If you might be having, a job in addition to this arts job, it's just such a dynamic field that we didn't want to leave out those occupations that aren't meeting it, because that kind of self-contracted business, that entrepreneurial piece might not always be captured in the Department of Labor wages. But we do want to have it there as a conversation piece with students to say, hey, this is something you're interested in. Here's what data is showing about that, just so you are aware, and we can start to maybe think more intentionally about what some of your interdisciplinary options are. If you want to take some courses also in education or in business, so that as you're pursuing this route, you would always have those credentials or that experience, that coursework to also incorporate if you're not getting to that living wage threshold that you thought you might be able to get to with that career. And if we move, thanks, Megan. So here's something that's definitely different about this program of study compared to the other ones. So you can see in these post-secondary option paths here, there's these bluish purple, kind of dependent on your screen, these interdisciplinary study bars, right? So you can see like for fine arts and design, and also in performing arts, we explicitly called out nonprofit management and leadership. You can see entrepreneurship is called out in all of these really. Also looking at education within those first 2 pathways there, but knowing that education can also be embedded into lots of other industry areas. Mass media and communication, where we also look at that journalism piece, right? So we really wanted to say, okay, you as a student individual, you are interested in these things and you might just pursue that thing on its own, right? But also understand that you might be starting to think about this in a more holistic manner, and where you might want to take your love for fine arts and design and be a part of a nonprofit organization and be part of that leadership team there. So knowing, again, the different roles that folks have in arts and communication, and especially those within the advisory committee who, were teachers and also maybe had like a side thing that they did, right? Just wanting to capture that dynamic spirit of the field. And then looking here at our different courses, these are aligned to the ISB-CTE courses with the one note about performing arts. We flagged in there an introduction to performing arts. There isn't, as far as I'm aware, unless something's changed, an ISB-CTE course for that. But the advisory committee, as we were going through discussions, did still want to flag there should be some sort of introductory piece there for students in that grades 9 through 10, that orientation introduction, that's introducing them to the variety of opportunities within the performing arts, right? So there's the one piece about actually performing, but there's all kinds of things that go into that. Set design, so you can see the stagecraft piece here too, that would expose students to that in the skill development phase. But really just similar to the other pathways, wanting to make sure that there was that introductory course that exposes students to the varieties of occupations. But you can see where we've incorporated those dual credit courses that are in alignment. So, thinking again here where you might have your ISB-CTE course, but where you might be able to incorporate a dual credit course in place of that, if a student was able to exhibit readiness and if there are any prereqs, can meet those. But as Megan talked through earlier, really looking at courses that are common across the field and that also have a very low barrier or no prerequisite barrier at all to actually taking them and completing them and engaging with them within the high school space. One other piece I'll kind of call out on here too, in terms of that performing arts one. And this is applicable too, as you might be thinking about some of your common, your core academics that I'll talk to in a moment, is in that capstone or advanced, we have called out the art, music, dance, film, or theater appreciation. These are, again, dual credit courses that could be meeting that social science component, could be meeting that capstone component, but are really exposing students to that field and letting them dive deeply into that specific thing that they like, right? So the music, dance, film, theater, letting them start to customize their pathways they might move into a post-secondary plan. And then as we get into our core content here, I would say not too much, really wild in the science, math, English, social science that is called out here, kind of beyond what some of the other programs of studies have. But the one row that we really did build out for this program of study is at the bottom. So for the electives, again, wanting to capture that interdisciplinary nature, if that's something that a student wanted to pursue. Wanted to call out where you might take some different business or foundations to teaching classes as you start along your pathway, where you might also incorporate some of that entrepreneurship or website development if you did want to have your own business in this field. So wanting to, again, incorporate where students could, kind of create their own adventure in arts and communication. So they're interested in performing arts, but they're also interested in the idea of owning their own theater company one day, right? So how could they have kind of that combination of exposure and skill development there. And then what you see here are the two courses that we developed. So again, as Megan talked through, we really looked at syllabi from across the state, right? So the different community colleges who are offering these courses, what some of those common factors were, but also thinking through, right, some of our post-secondary partners as you're engaging and wanting to get ready for a course. What are the things that they're seeing that would make a student most prepared as they're entering into that? So this course here, Introduction to Digital Design, this is a skill development course for that fine arts and design path. Again, you can start to look through here and you see some very explicit technical skills being called out. But we also incorporate a lot of those essential creative thinking, resiliency, initiative taking skills. And there's a lot of like reflection and critical assessment that you can see in here. Just really important for students as they're engaging in this field. And you can see also some interdisciplinary pieces in here too, when you're looking at like marketing research, right? These are pieces that could apply beyond kind of that digital design class. And then the next one is for multimedia production. And so this is a capstone course within that mass media and communication piece. And this one really gets to a lot of the pieces of it that make it a capstone is a student really having to tell a story, right? So you've learned about all these different skills and tools and resources and all these different models. And now you have to start to tell your own story. And then the other kind of capstone piece of this too is how much you have to work as a team. And so those were, when I think back to those advisory committee meetings, really we're looking at those competencies and thinking through how do we really prepare a student as they might be transitioning into a post-secondary to understand what it is to work on a team and all the different roles that make a message or a story happen. But also, what does it mean to actually tell a story? And how do you tell a story in a way that actually is applicable or to the audience it's directed for or to a diverse set of audiences, right? So this was that capstone course here, which incorporates lots of really, I think, fun competencies. And
Thank you so much, Heather. I
Thanks,
really
Megan.
appreciate all your hard work on this guide. And thank you for joining me today. So now I want to introduce Laura Roberts of Mattoon High School, and she is going to be presenting our model program of study in action. Her institution has done great work within this field, and so I'm really excited for her to share all of the things that they're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So a little bit about me. My name is Laura Roberts. I teach at Mattoon High School, which is in South Central Illinois, basically a very rural area. I am a graphic communication teacher. I'm also the Skills USA advisor. So what I teach, the type of software, I'm mostly Adobe. I teach Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe InDesign, Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, and Adobe Spark. Most of the stuff that I teach is project-based learning. So the students are learning about copyright, design, project management, research and communication, photography, graphic design, and illustration and page layout by doing projects. In addition, they also learn about the production and running of a business. So how they could work with clients, how they can present their ideas, collaborate, how they accept feedback, and how they do the actual production. So the students work with digital printing, screen printing, dye sublimation, and vinyl printing. And they also learn how to bind and finish their products. Next slide, please. Thanks, Megan. So currently, this is where I'm at with my course. I have a freshman level and sophomore level course called Career Exploration. In our school district, we found that a lot of the freshmen coming in didn't understand all the different electives out there. So we came up with a Career Exploration course in which they rotate between 4 different teachers every 5 weeks, where they learn a little bit about agriculture, drafting and woodshop, graphic communication, and food and textile design. That way they have a little bit of idea of what they can take their sophomore, junior, and senior year on more of a career pathway. I have been teaching Graphic Arts 1 and Graphic Arts 2. Next year coming up, I'm changing it to Visual Design 1 and Visual Design 2. They are both elective courses and dual credit. So with my new course of Visual Design 1, it's basically digital media design and production. And the students will learn project-based curriculum and develop their communication skills, design skills, project management, research, and communication while doing photography, graphic design, and illustration and page layout. After the first semester, they get a little bit of all of the programs. I start them in Photoshop, then Illustrator, then InDesign. And then second semester, they get to choose which one they want to earn the dual credit for, whether it's Illustrator, InDesign, or Photoshop. I also am working on trying to get it so they actually become Adobe certified. It's Adobe certified professional now, not associate. They changed that. So they should be able to test and actually get credentials at the end of the year in that specific software. My advanced one, which is graphic communication workplace experience, is my students are running the school district print shop. And what they do is they take jobs from start to finish. Everything is live production work. And then while they're doing that, they get to choose which, if they got certified in Adobe Illustrator and Visual Design 1, so in Visual Design 2, they might want to get certified in Adobe Photoshop and Adobe InDesign. So one semester they can get certified in one, and the second semester they get certified in the second one. A lot of these courses, not only is it real work experience, but they also get to go job shadow with some of the local businesses and compare our print shop to the local print shops in town, from a screen printing to a college print shop. Next slide, please. So I've got a few challenges that seem to cause some issues right now. For one, trying to get enough students to take my class. I've got a lot of people, parents and community, that we're in a low income area and it's more focused on farming, and they don't really see much of a need for the design part. So I've got to try to change the concept or the perception that parents and the community have about printing. A lot of them think it's antiquated, it's just a printing press and it's not used anymore. Student interest, a lot of students don't know what my program does. So I need to make sure I advocate for it and market it a little bit better. Our scheduling right now, there's 5 periods to our day. So when the students are taking their required courses, they only have room for maybe 1 or 2 electives. And so they're choosing between taking website design or graphic communications or agriculture or foods. So it's not really giving students a lot of choice or a lot of room. I do offer dual credit for my Visual Design 1 and Visual Design 2. And we do have a low income area. I think our income, we're in about 85% low income, free and reduced. So it costs money to take dual credit courses. So a lot of students, they can't afford it, they don't want to take it. And also there's not really a clear pathway between high school and what they can get in college. What are the positions? Well, right now we know there's graphic design, digital media design, but there's also web design, UX designers, animators. There's so many different ways that people can go right from high school into the college. So I think making sure the students know where they can go and what the possibilities are is really a challenge. Next slide, please. I do have lots of successes. Like I said, I have a lot of business partners. I have Wave Graphics, Lakeland College. I've got several print shops in our town that they went through this program and they own successful businesses from them. So I get to have a lot of people that are guest speakers. I have students that can job shadow and even work for the companies in our town. So there's some real opportunities for their employment. I also am my Skills USA advisor. If you've never heard of Skills USA, it is a partnership of students, teachers, and industry working together to ensure America has a skilled workforce. Skills USA is all about vocational education. And so they have lots of competitions, not only locally, regionally, statewide, that's also nationwide, and they also have worldwide. So actually next week, I'm going to be taking a couple of my students to the Skills USA state competition in Peoria. One is going to be presenting about t-shirt design, their concept from start to finish, and presenting it. And another student is doing it on photography, different types of photography and how they took the pictures. So that's next week. Get to go on that right away. They do get to earn dual credit from Lakeland College. And I was certified in the industry for print ed. It's a national certification, but I'm switching that over. Now certified, Adobe Certified Professional is how I would like to get the students. Adobe Certified Professional, once they get their certification, it's good for 3 years and it's recognized in a lot of the industry. I think it's also recognized a lot in colleges. If they come with that certified professional, that they should be able to not have to take certain courses. So I also have been working very hard in advocating and marketing for my program, but I do realize that students are the best advocates for it. So I'm trying to get them to spread the word because everybody that's taken my class loves it. It's just, most of them are like, oh, I wish I would have taken it sooner. I'm like, well, tell other people, you know? What's my next thing? I need to really work on changing the parents' perception of graphic communications. We had some really big print shops in our town, Donley, we had newspapers, they've basically shut down. The printing industry or the graphic communication industry has evolved, and it's not just on paper. So I need to make sure that they realize there's different careers out there for the students. Social media careers, digital media, interactive, augmented reality, virtual reality. That is the new future. And so I need to make sure that my community and the parents know how this can help them. I need to find better or more business partners to do internships with at the high school level. And right now, Skills USA, if you're a Skills USA member, they have a registered apprenticeship program. So I have to work around, try to contact this summer a few different organizations and see if they would like to partner. So next year I can have apprenticeships with my students. So that's pretty much where I'm at. Anybody have any questions?
And so although we don't have questions now, Laura, we offer up our participants an opportunity to complete a survey. And so in that survey, there may be some questions that emerge and bubble up. If so, I will definitely let you know. But if there are questions, again, we have our chat box and our Q&A function. So please feel free to utilize those options as well. And so I want to thank you so much, Laura, for providing that information. It was definitely extremely valuable and beneficial. And so I want to pause and allow for us to provide some feedback, right? So if there are any thoughts that are circling in your mind, a thought or a concept that squares your thinking, or 1 to 3 takeaways that you like to share, please feel free to go ahead and drop that in the chat box or in the Q&A box. Again, a concept or a thought or a question that's circling in your mind, something that squares your thinking, or 1 to 3 takeaways that you'd like to share with the group, please feel free to go ahead and do that now. Again, if something comes up for you at a later time, no worries. You all will have access to our contact information. So if there are some things that you'd like to discuss, we can do that. I see Lori here is asking a question, and this question is, do you have any examples of community colleges that offer these courses in high schools with community college teachers? That is a good question. I'm gonna ask Laura, at the institutions of which you teach, do you know if there are any community college institutions that teach these courses in high school with community college teachers?
Well, actually, before I became a teacher, I actually worked in the industry for 18 years. And so that's how I got my credentials to be the dual credit teacher. But I do not know of what our local community college teacher, what they have as their credentials. But I do know that they can go from our high school to Lakeland College, and they can go to the graphic design, the website design pathway, the digital media pathway. They do have a couple pathways and go there. We are also like maybe a half an hour away from Eastern Illinois University, and they have several digital media programs there and graphic design programs there that they can actually go into.
Yeah, I see Lori also made another comment, and I think what she's saying is that she too is in a rural area, and so they may not have enough students from one high school, but it could be possible to get a class comprised of students from several different high schools. And then she's given a shout out for EIU there. She went there for journalism, which is always nice to meet a fellow colleague.
Exactly.
But great points there, Lori. We appreciate that. Michael here is asking Laura about the positions that a student is able to go into as a career within this particular sector. Can you share maybe some thoughts of, about positions that you know of, maybe some alumni, or maybe some of your colleagues and the careers that they are engaging currently?
I've actually had several students that have went into the graphic design or digital media design programs that have went into other businesses, not even local. I had one that went downtown Chicago and is working downtown Chicago as a graphic designer. I have some that moved to other states and have worked in the design field. I have a couple of students that are marketing directors of different communities also. So they can take it for graphic design, website design, digital media design. There are several different ways that they can use what they've learned. And many of them, I have at least, I'd say 10 or 15 of my past graduates that have become professional photographers. And they're doing wedding photography or portrait photography, and they made a career out of it. So although it might not have been one that, according to the information you guys had, that was for the income, but it was enough for them to start a career from, so.
Thank you so much for that response. And thank you, Lori and Michael, for your thoughtful comments and questions. And so I want to provide another opportunity to share your feedback. And so if you have a smartphone, feel free to take your phone out and just toggle it across our QR code, and that is going to take you directly to our survey for this session. If you don't have a smartphone, don't worry, we got you. We're going to send this information out along with the recording via email too. So you have a couple of ways to submit that feedback. But this survey is important because we want to get information about our model program of study implementation as a whole. If you were on the advisory committee, we want to hear about that. And then we want to know your perspective on the webinar review and your thoughts on its effectiveness. So those are like the types of questions that you're going to receive in that survey. Again, a couple of things that I think is important for you all to know too is that we have a huge resource hub within our IWIN, which stands for Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Network. And so this is a great opportunity for you all to engage within that particular sector and learn more information and resources about how to understand what's happening in our state. How do you connect with other colleagues that are doing this work as well? So please, please, please feel free to log in to our website and sign up for our newsletter, but I will send that to you in an email as well. And so that generally concludes our webinar. And so we'll hang back here for a minute or two to answer any questions that you have. Again, this information will be emailed out to you all, so please feel free to share it with your colleagues. And thank you so much for attending, and a huge thank you for Heather, for Laura, and for Janelle for joining me in this session.